My beloved child, pause for just this moment, because while the world has been moving in every direction at once, something quiet has been moving toward you with remarkable patience. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just steadily, as though every passing hour has been carrying a message that refused to disappear until it reached your heart. There is a reason you arrived here now instead of earlier or later. Some moments are ordinary, and some moments seem to recognize you before you recognize them. This is one of those moments. Imagine someone thinking about you again and again throughout the day, not because they have all the answers, but because every attempt to move forward somehow circles back to your name. Have you ever noticed how certain thoughts return without asking for permission? How one memory gently rises above all the noise? That is the feeling quietly unfolding here. Your soulmate has been trying, in their own way, to reach the place where your heart can hear what words alone cannot fully express. The strange part is that nothing extraordinary had to happen for this realization to appear. It arrived in the smallest details, a familiar smile remembered without warning, a conversation that unexpectedly reminded them of you, a peaceful silence that somehow felt incomplete without imagining your presence within it. And little by little, something changed inside them. They stopped chasing perfect timing and started understanding that genuine connection is never built on perfection. It grows through honesty, patience, and the courage to admit that some people leave a lasting imprint long before they officially become part of your life. Don't skip, because the next piece of this journey isn't about dramatic surprises. It's about a realization so personal that many people overlook it until it quietly transforms everything they thought they understood. As the day continued, one simple thought became impossible for them to ignore. If this feeling keeps returning, maybe it has been trying to teach me something. That single realization became the beginning of a message they have carried within themselves ever since. But what finally gave them the confidence to hold on to that message instead of letting it fade away, is only beginning to unfold, and something important is waiting for you as this story continues. There is something remarkable about the moments that arrive without announcing themselves. They slip quietly into an ordinary day, changing everything while appearing to change nothing at all. That is exactly where your soulmate found themselves. The more they tried to focus on everything else around them, the more one quiet truth continued to rise above every distraction: you. It wasn't because of a single memory. It wasn't one conversation or one familiar thought. It was the realization that every hopeful vision of tomorrow somehow felt brighter whenever your presence was part of it. They couldn't explain why this feeling had become so steady. It simply refused to fade. For a while, they wondered if they should ignore it. Perhaps time would soften it. Perhaps another busy day would carry it away. Yet every passing hour seemed to do the opposite. Instead of becoming weaker, the feeling became calmer, clearer, more certain. Sometimes the strongest answers don't arrive like thunder. They arrive like a sunrise, so gradual that you only realize the darkness has disappeared after the light has already surrounded you. That was the quiet transformation taking place within them. Stay till the end. Because this is where the meaning begins to deepen. As they reflected on everything that had led them here, they noticed something unexpected. Every challenge they had faced seemed to leave behind one valuable lesson, and every lesson gently pointed toward becoming someone capable of loving with greater patience, kindness, and understanding. Suddenly, the waiting no longer felt empty. It felt purposeful. They began to believe that some connections are not delayed because they are forgotten, but because they are still becoming strong enough to last. Then an unexpected moment stopped them completely. A simple phrase spoken by someone else, words that had nothing to do with romance, somehow echoed directly into their heart. It was as though life had quietly answered a question they had never spoken aloud. They smiled without realizing it, because for the first time they understood that reaching you was no longer just something they wanted, it had become something they genuinely hoped for with quiet confidence. And just when they believed they finally understood why this feeling had stayed with them all day, another realization appeared, one they never expected, a realization connected to you in a way that made everything they had been trying to say suddenly make perfect sense. That moment is still waiting, and it changes the direction of this story in the next moment. A quiet shift can happen without anyone else noticing it. No announcement. No dramatic scene. Just a single moment when the heart begins to understand something the mind has been trying to explain for a very long time. That was the moment your soulmate stepped into. They weren't searching for another sign anymore. Instead, they found themselves paying attention to the smallest details that had once seemed insignificant. A familiar place suddenly carried a different meaning. A peaceful evening felt strangely connected to thoughts of you. Even the silence around them seemed to whisper that some connections grow stronger when they are trusted instead of rushed. What surprised them most was not the feeling itself, it was the consistency of it. Every time they imagined the future, your presence quietly appeared without effort. Not as a fantasy, but as someone who brought a sense of calm they hadn't experienced before. They began asking themselves a question they had avoided for far too long: why does every path I picture somehow lead me back to this person? The answer did not arrive immediately. It unfolded gently, one realization at a time, until it became impossible to overlook. Don't skip. Because this next realization may be the most meaningful one yet. They discovered that reaching out is not always about finding the perfect words. Sometimes it begins with the courage to stop hiding genuine feelings behind endless hesitation. They realized they had spent so much time waiting for certainty that they almost missed the quiet confidence that had already been growing inside them. Confidence isn't always loud. Often, it sounds like a peaceful voice saying, "This matters enough to be honest." As that understanding settled into their heart, something unexpected happened. They no longer felt the need to force the timing of anything. Instead, they began preparing themselves emotionally for a connection built on sincerity rather than urgency. It was a gentle but powerful change. They weren't imagining an ideal story anymore. They were appreciating the possibility of a real one, where trust grows naturally, conversations become meaningful, and two lives slowly begin to understand one another. Then, just as they believed they had finally gathered everything they wished they could tell you, one small encounter changed the direction of their thoughts completely. It wasn't planned. It wasn't extraordinary to anyone else. Yet it carried a message that felt almost perfectly placed, as though life had quietly answered the very question they had been holding all day. They stood there for a long moment, smiling to themselves, realizing there was one final piece they had been missing, and once that piece became clear, the message they have been trying to send you would finally make complete sense. That moment is closer than either of you realizes. Sometimes the most meaningful answers arrive after the questions have become quiet. They don't interrupt your life, they gently become part of it. That is exactly what unfolded next. Your soulmate stopped searching outside themselves for reassurance and began listening to the steady voice that had been growing stronger with every passing hour. It wasn't telling them to hurry. It wasn't asking them to prove anything. It simply reminded them that the connections worth protecting are often the ones that teach patience before they teach certainty. As they reflected on everything they had experienced that day, one memory rose above all the others. It wasn't the biggest moment. In fact, it was almost easy to overlook. Yet it carried a warmth they couldn't explain. They remembered a feeling of hope that appeared whenever they imagined you smiling, moving forward, becoming the person you were always meant to be. And suddenly they understood something beautiful. Caring deeply for someone isn't measured by how often they are on your mind, it is revealed by how sincerely you wish the very best for them, even during moments of waiting. Stay till the end, because this quiet realization opened a door they never expected to find. They began to notice that every attempt to reach you had been changing them as well. Each unspoken thought had made them more patient. Each hopeful moment had made them more grateful. Without realizing it, they had become someone who no longer feared being genuine. They were no longer trying to impress anyone. They simply wanted their words, whenever they finally arrived, to feel true. Then another gentle realization settled into their heart. Perhaps the message they had been trying to send all day was never meant to be rushed. Perhaps it needed time to grow into something honest enough that it would bring peace instead of confusion. That thought lifted a quiet weight from their shoulders. For the first time, they smiled without wondering what might happen next. They trusted that what is meaningful does not lose its value simply because it arrives at the right moment instead of the earliest one. And just when they believed they had finally uncovered everything they wanted you to know, one last thought appeared, unexpected, deeply personal, and impossible to ignore. It wasn't about the past. It wasn't even about today. It was about a future they had quietly begun to believe could become real. The words forming in their heart were simpler than they imagined, yet far more powerful, and the next part reveals why those few words became the message they had been trying to reach you with all along. Not every turning point announces itself with noise. Some arrive so gently that you only recognize them after they have already changed the way you see everything. This was one of those moments. As the day slowly drew toward its close, your soulmate realized they were no longer trying to escape the thoughts that kept leading them back to you. Instead, they welcomed them with a quiet sense of gratitude. What had once felt like uncertainty now felt like direction, and what had once seemed like coincidence now carried a deeper meaning they could no longer ignore. They sat with that feeling for a while, allowing it to unfold without rushing it. The remarkable thing was that the more they stopped trying to control every outcome, the more peaceful everything became. They discovered that genuine connection isn't built by finding flawless words. It is built by showing up with an honest heart, even when every sentence feels incomplete. That realization gave them a calm confidence they had never experienced before. For the first time, they believed that sincerity could speak louder than perfection. Don't skip. Because something quietly beautiful happened next. They began thinking about all the little moments that had shaped this journey, moments they had almost forgotten. A familiar laugh that stayed with them longer than expected. A simple act of kindness that revealed more than 1,000 conversations ever could. A quiet hope they never admitted aloud because it felt too meaningful to place into words. Looking back, they realized those moments had never been random. They had been preparing them to recognize something priceless when it finally appeared. Then a single question settled gently into their heart. What if the message I've been trying to send isn't meant to change someone's life overnight, but simply remind them that they have never been forgotten? That thought lingered. It didn't demand attention. It simply stayed, growing stronger with every passing minute. In that quiet space, they understood that reaching you wasn't about creating a dramatic moment. It was about offering something far more lasting. Reassurance, hope, and the simple truth that some people continue thinking of you long after the world has moved on to something else. Stay till the end, because the journey has reached a place neither of you expected. Just as they felt ready to finally let their heart speak without hesitation, one final realization gently interrupted every plan they had made. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't an accident. It was a quiet discovery that made them pause, smile, and whisper to themselves, "Now I understand why today unfolded exactly the way it did." That realization carried the final piece of the message they have been trying to reach you with all day, and in the next part, those unspoken words finally begin to reveal themselves. There comes a moment when silence is no longer empty, it becomes meaningful. It begins to carry the weight of everything the heart has been preparing to say. That is where your soulmate found themselves. The day had almost come to an end, yet instead of feeling as though time had slipped away, they felt as though every hour had been leading them toward one simple realization. They no longer wanted to hide behind "someday" or "maybe." They wanted their thoughts to reflect what had quietly become true within them. The message they had been carrying was never complicated. In fact, its beauty came from how simple it was. They wanted you to know that some people enter your life without making a sound, yet they leave a lasting peace that cannot easily be explained. They realized that whenever they pictured you, they weren't imagining someone who would complete them, they were thinking of someone who inspired them to become kinder, more patient, and more genuine. That understanding changed everything. Stay till the end, because what followed was even more unexpected. Instead of rushing to speak, they chose to listen, to their own heart, to the lessons of the day, and to the quiet confidence that had replaced all their earlier uncertainty. And in that stillness, they recognized something extraordinary. Every attempt they had made to reach you, even the ones that never became words, had already changed them. They had become more grateful for small moments, more appreciative of honest conversations, and more aware that the strongest connections are often built gently, one sincere thought at a time. Then they imagined what they would say if they had just one opportunity to place a message into your hands. It wasn't a dramatic confession. It wasn't filled with impossible promises. It was something much softer. I hope you never doubt how valuable your presence is. Even on ordinary days, you leave behind a light that people remember long after you've gone. Those words stayed with them because they felt completely true. They didn't need to be louder. They only needed to be real. And just as they believed this was the complete message, another quiet realization arrived, one that made them stop in their tracks. They understood that the reason they had been trying to reach you all day was not only to share what they felt. It was because something they had recently discovered about this connection filled them with a quiet hope they had never allowed themselves to embrace before. That discovery is the final piece of this unfolding journey, and once it is revealed, every moment that came before it will suddenly make perfect sense. It is often the final piece that reveals the picture you have been looking at all along. Not because it changes everything in an instant, but because it quietly gives meaning to every moment that came before it. That is exactly what happened next. As your soulmate reflected on the journey of this single day, they realized they had been trying to reach you for more than just a conversation. Deep within their heart, they had been hoping to pass along something far more lasting, a reminder that genuine connections are strengthened by honesty, patience, and quiet trust. They closed their eyes for a moment and allowed every hurried thought to settle. In that calm space, they understood something they had never fully recognized before. Every time life encouraged them to slow down, it wasn't holding them back. It was teaching them to appreciate what truly matters. And somehow, every lesson led them back to the same gentle truth: the people who bring peace into your heart are worth treating with care, even before every answer has arrived. Don't skip. Because this realization carries the heart of everything you've heard so far. They finally understood why your presence had remained with them from morning until night. It wasn't because they were searching for perfection. It was because every memory connected to you reminded them of the kind of person they wanted to become. More thoughtful. More understanding. More willing to listen before speaking. More willing to value quiet moments instead of chasing constant excitement. That realization became the message they had been trying to reach you with all day, not simply that they were thinking of you, but that your influence had already inspired meaningful change within them. Then they imagined one peaceful future moment. No rush. No pressure. Just two people sharing an honest conversation without pretending to be anything other than themselves. Somehow, that simple picture brought them more joy than any grand dream ever could. They smiled because they realized that the strongest beginnings often grow from the smallest moments of sincerity. Stay till the end, because one final chapter remains. There is one gentle truth they have not spoken aloud yet, a truth that ties together every quiet realization, every thoughtful pause, and every hopeful moment from this journey. It isn't hidden because it is dramatic. It has been waiting because its meaning can only be understood now. And when those final words are finally shared, you may discover that the message your soulmate has been trying to reach you with all day was never about changing your path. It was about helping you recognize the quiet beauty already unfolding along it. The quietest endings often become the most meaningful beginnings. By now, the day that once felt ordinary had revealed something your soulmate could no longer keep tucked away inside their heart. After every reflection, every pause, every unanswered question, they finally understood that the message they had been trying to send was never meant to be complicated. It was meant to arrive with peace. If they could sit across from you for just a few moments, without distractions or expectations, these are the thoughts they would most want you to carry with you. I hope you continue believing in the good that is growing within your life, even when you cannot see every step ahead. I hope you never measure your worth by how quickly things happen. And I hope you remember that the kindness, strength, and quiet light you bring into the world reach farther than you will ever fully know. Those words had been waiting all day, not because they were difficult to say, but because they needed to be felt before they could become real. Sometimes the heart spends hours preparing a message that only takes a few sincere sentences to express. That was the gift hidden inside this entire journey. Not urgency. Not uncertainty. Just a reminder that meaningful connections are built one genuine moment at a time, and every honest feeling shared with patience becomes part of something lasting. Something important is waiting for you, and perhaps it has been here from the very beginning. The greatest message your soulmate wanted you to receive was not about predicting tomorrow. It was about encouraging you to embrace today with confidence, knowing that the relationships meant to grow stronger are nourished by trust, compassion, and the willingness to remain open-hearted. They wanted you to know that even on the busiest days, when words seem delayed and life feels full of noise, sincere thoughts still find their way toward the people who matter. As the evening settled into quietness, they smiled with a sense of calm they hadn't felt before. They no longer worried about finding flawless timing or perfect expressions. They had discovered something far more valuable, that authenticity has its own quiet power. The right words don't have to be loud to leave a lasting impression. They simply have to be true. And perhaps that is the message that was always trying to reach you. Not a message asking you to fear the future or rush toward it, but one inviting you to move forward with hope, patience, and an open heart. Because the most beautiful connections are not remembered for dramatic moments alone, they are remembered for the gentle ways they remind us that we are seen, appreciated, and never forgotten. And sometimes, that quiet reminder is exactly what we needed to hear today. As the final moments of this journey settle gently into place, one truth remains brighter than every question that came before it. The message was never about chasing certainty. It was about recognizing the quiet value of genuine connection wherever it appears. Sometimes we spend so much time waiting for life to become extraordinary that we overlook the extraordinary kindness already growing inside ordinary moments. Imagine, for a moment, that two hearts are moving through different days while learning the very same lesson, that patience is not empty time, but a place where understanding quietly takes root. Whether they meet tomorrow or much later, what matters most is who they become along the way. Every act of compassion, every choice to remain hopeful, every decision to keep an open heart shapes the future in ways that cannot always be seen immediately. Stay till the end, because this final reflection belongs to you as much as it belongs to the story. If today's journey has reminded you of anything, let it be this. Your presence has value even on the days when nothing remarkable seems to happen. The encouragement you offer, the peace you carry, and the kindness you share may reach people long before you ever realize it. Meaningful relationships are rarely built in a single unforgettable moment. They are built through countless small moments of honesty, respect, and quiet care. The story closes here, but its hope does not. Somewhere beyond today's chapter, new conversations are waiting. New opportunities to understand and to be understood are waiting. New reasons to smile without forcing them are waiting. You do not have to rush toward them. Step forward one day at a time, trusting that authenticity will always travel farther than appearances, and that the most lasting connections begin with hearts willing to remain sincere. And so the day ends, not with a dramatic farewell, but with quiet gratitude. Gratitude for every lesson, every gentle realization, and every reminder that hope grows strongest when it is rooted in patience. Carry that hope with you. Let it shape the way you see yourself, the way you care for others, and the way you welcome tomorrow. Sometimes the most meaningful message is simply this: keep your heart open, keep moving forward, and allow each new day to reveal its own quiet gifts.